rain hammered against the tall windows, drumming a restless rhythm through the sprawling estate. Candles flickered in the draft, shadows stretching across the polished marble floors. In the dim nursery light, Alana Bennett knelt on the hardwood, one hand on the crib, the other rubbing slow circles on the back of the sleeping infant beside her. Her thin blanket was bunched around her shoulders, barely enough to keep the cold away. The little girl, Amelia, lay on her back, her tiny fists resting open, breath hitching softly as if the memory of her earlier crying still lingered. Alana had stayed like this for hours, first standing, then sitting, finally lying on the rug beside the crib when the baby refused to settle unless she felt someone close. The clock on the wall clicked past midnight. The door swung open. "What the hell is this?" The voice was sharp, clipped, and laced with disbelief. Oliver Grant, billionaire and head of Grant Enterprises, filled the doorway in his dark tailor suit, jacket still on, as though he'd walked in straight from a boardroom war. His eyes scanned the room, the scattered toys, the untouched crib, the woman on the floor. Alana rose halfway to her knees. "She wouldn't sleep," she said softly. "I tried." "You're the help, not family," Oliver interrupted, stepping into the room. "If she cries, you call Mrs. Hawkins. You don't make yourself comfortable on the floor like this." His voice curled around the word comfortable like it was poison. Alana blinked at him, stunned. "She's just a baby. She is my daughter," Oliver snapped, moving to lift the infant from the crib. The sudden movement startled Amelia, her face scrunching before the wail burst out again, sharp, panicked, urgent. Alana instinctively reached out. "Please, let me." "I said enough," Oliver cut in, but the baby's cries only grew louder, desperate. His hands shifted awkwardly, unused to the rhythm of soothing a child. "Why won't she stop?" Alana's voice was steady now but low. "Because she doesn't know you yet. She only knows who's been here. She knows my voice, my smell. She knows I won't put her down when she's scared." Oliver hesitated, looking down at the writhing bundle in his arms. For a second, there was a flicker, something almost human breaking through the corporate steel of his expression. Then, without a word, he handed Amelia back. The change was immediate. The baby curled against Alana's chest like a puzzle piece finding its place. Her sobs softened to hiccups, then to slow, steady breaths. Oliver stared. Alana sank back onto the rug, rocking gently, eyes never leaving Amelia's tiny face. She didn't look at him again. The silence stretched. Then, with no further comment, Oliver turned and left, the sound of his polished shoes fading down the hall. By morning, the house staff moved with their usual brisk efficiency, polished silverware on the long dining table, the scent of fresh pastries wafting from the kitchen. Oliver sat at the head of the table, reading his phone, his tie slightly loose. Across from him, Mrs. Hawkins, the longtime housekeeper, glanced toward Alana as she walked through with a folded blanket. "She only sleeps for her," Mrs. Hawkins murmured to Oliver, almost to herself. Oliver didn't look up. "That's not sustainable," he replied, though his voice lacked conviction. The second night, Alana tried to lay Amelia in the crib after she'd finally fallen asleep in her arms. The baby's eyes flew open instantly, her cry breaking the stillness. Mrs. Hawkins tried to soothe her. Nothing. Oliver stepped in, but his hands, firm and decisive in business, were clumsy here. Only when Alana returned to the nursery and lifted Amelia did the cries dissolve. The third night, Oliver didn't enter. He stood just outside the door, listening. There was no crying, only a quiet hum, low and warm, carrying a tune without words. After a moment, he knocked. Alana opened the door, careful not to wake the baby on her shoulder. "I need to speak with you," he said. She stepped into the hall and closed the door behind her. "I owe you an apology," Oliver said, his voice lower than she'd ever heard it. "For what?" "For what I said that night. For how I treated you. It was wrong." Alana studied him for a moment, her face unreadable. Amelia doesn't care about apologies. She just needs to feel safe. I know, he said quietly, and I don't think she's the only one. Something in her chest tightened, but she didn't answer. I'm not asking you to trust me, Oliver added. Just don't quit. Not yet. She needs you. Alana looked past him, down the endless hallway lined with portraits of stern-faced Grants. For her, she said at last. For her, Oliver agreed. That night, Alana returned to the nursery, sat on the floor beside the crib, and stayed there long after Amelia was asleep. She'd been told her whole life to stay in her place, to know the boundaries between service and belonging. But as the baby's soft breath filled the quiet room, Alana couldn't help thinking that maybe in this tiny corner of the house, those rules didn't matter. The days that followed passed in a strange kind of rhythm. Oliver left early, returning late, his presence in the house reduced to the sound of car doors in the driveway and the occasional muted conversation in his study. Alana spent her hours moving between the nursery and the kitchen, helping with small household tasks when Amelia was calm enough to be set down. But calm was rare. The baby's cries cut through the walls like a siren, frantic until she was pressed against Alana's chest. No one could explain it. Not the pediatrician, not Mrs. Hawkins, not Oliver. It wasn't colic, it wasn't illness. It was need, pure and stubborn. One rainy afternoon, Alana sat in the rocking chair with Amelia, humming without thinking. Mrs. Hawkins poked her head in, carrying a fresh stack of blankets. "You'll wear yourself out, girl," she said. Alana smiled faintly. Better me than her. Mrs. Hawkins studied her. "You've got a way about you, not just with the baby, with this house. I'm just doing my job." The older woman gave a quiet, knowing laugh. "That's what you think." That evening, as the rain thickened outside, Oliver came home earlier than usual. His tie was gone, the first 2 buttons of his shirt undone. He paused in the doorway of the nursery, watching Alana sway with Amelia. "How long does she sleep like that?" he asked. "Sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 3 hours," Alana replied without looking up. "And you just stay there?" "She stays asleep. That's all that matters." Oliver stepped inside, his shoes soft on the rug. "What about you? When do you sleep?" Alana finally met his gaze. "When I can, but I've done harder things." Something in her tone stopped him from asking what those harder things were. The next morning, Alana overheard a phone call from the hallway. Oliver's voice, low but sharp. "No, Victoria, I'm not going to the gala. I have a daughter who barely sleeps unless the nanny—" He stopped suddenly as though catching himself. "Unless Alana is here." The word nanny stung, though she knew it was technically true. But there was a difference between a title and the quiet, relentless love she poured into every hour with Amelia. Later that week, Oliver found her in the kitchen, folding a basket of freshly laundered baby clothes. "Do you always hum when you work?" he asked. "Old habit," she replied. "My mother used to do that," he said, almost to himself. "I'd forgotten until just now." Alana didn't answer. Some memories weren't meant to be handled carelessly. That night, the house felt unusually still. Oliver came to the nursery after dinner, hesitating in the doorway again. "Teach me," he said. "To hum?" she asked, eyebrows lifting. "To get her to sleep, the way you do." Alana studied him for a long moment, then shifted Amelia into his arms. He looked uncertain, but followed her quiet instructions, rocking gently, keeping his voice low, letting the rhythm of his steps match her breathing. It took nearly 20 minutes, but finally Amelia's eyelids fluttered shut. Oliver exhaled, a sound almost like relief. "See?" Alana murmured. "She's so small," he said quietly, looking down at his daughter as though really seeing her for the first time. Alana nodded. "They all start small. It's what we do for them that decides how they grow." He looked at her, then really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. 2 nights later, there was another storm. The power flickered twice before settling. Amelia was restless, sensing the change in the air. Alana stayed with her through the night, sitting cross-legged on the floor, back against the wall. At some point, Oliver appeared carrying a mug of tea. He set it beside her without a word, then sat opposite her on the rug. "You don't have to be here," she whispered. "Neither do you," he replied. She gave him a faint, tired smile. She'd disagree. For a long while, they just listened to the rain in the soft breasts of the sleeping child. When dawn came, Alana shifted stiffly to her feet, brushing a lock of hair from her face. Oliver stood too, and for the first time since she'd arrived, he said her name without any edge in his voice. "Alana, thank you." She nodded once, then slipped past him, her blanket trailing behind like the faintest shadow. A week later, the calm they had been finding began to crack. It started with a phone call during breakfast. Oliver's expression hardened as he listened, nodding once before hanging up. "That was my sister," he said. "She's coming to stay for a few days." Mrs. Hawkins, standing by the sideboard, froze. "Isabel," Oliver nodded. Even Alana noticed the subtle shift in the air. She'd never met Isabel Grant, but the way Mrs. Hawkins's lips pressed into a thin line told her enough. When Isabel arrived, the house felt smaller. She swept in wearing a tailored coat, her heels clicking like a metronome of disapproval. Her gaze fell on Alana almost instantly. "You must be the caretaker," she said, drawing out the word like it tasted bad. "Alana Bennett," Alana replied evenly. Isabel's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure Oliver appreciates the help." Alana said nothing. Some battles weren't worth fighting out loud. That night, as Alana rocked Amelia to sleep, she heard muffled voices in the hall. Isabel's sharp tone cut through the air. "She's overstepping, Oliver. You've let her get too comfortable." "She's the only one Amelia will sleep for," Oliver replied. "She's an employee, not family," Isabel shot back. "The child needs boundaries, and so does the help." Alana froze. The words weren't new, she'd heard them in different houses, different lifetimes, but they still landed heavy. The next morning, Isabel tried to take Amelia from her arms. The baby's face crumpled, a wail breaking free. Isabel frowned. "Oh, for heaven's sake, she's spoiled." Alana kept her tone measured. "She's a baby, not spoiled." Isabel's eyes narrowed. "Do not correct me in my brother's house." Oliver entered just in time to see Amelia's distress. He crossed the room, taking the baby and without hesitation, passing her back to Elena. "She needs her calm," he said simply. For the rest of the day, Isabel avoided Alana, though her presence lingered like perfume in the halls. That evening, as Alana folded Amelia's clothes in the laundry room, she heard voices again, closer this time. "She's more than an employee, isn't she?" Isabel accused. "That's none of your business," Oliver replied. "She's manipulating you. You're vulnerable, and she's using the child to get to you." Alana's hands stilled on the fabric. "You don't know her," Oliver continued. "And you do?" Isabel's voice sharpened. "Where did she come from? What's her past? People like her don't just end up here without a reason." Alana quietly left the room before she could hear more. That night, she considered packing her things. She'd left jobs before when the walls closed in, when whispers grew louder than truth. But then she looked at Amelia, small, trusting, her tiny fingers curled around Alana's own, and something in her refused to move. The next day, Isabel confronted her directly. "I know your type," she said in the hallway. "You come in with soft smiles and tragic stories, and you leave with more than you came for." Alana's eyes didn't waver. "The only thing I came for is the baby's peace. Everything else is noise." For a moment, Isabel seemed taken aback. Then she gave a tight, cold smile and walked away. That evening, Oliver appeared at the nursery door. "She's leaving tomorrow," he said. Alana didn't look up from the crib. "Because you told her to, or because she wants to?" "Because I told her to," he replied. "This house isn't big enough for that kind of poison." For the first time, a small piece of the guarded wall inside Alana shifted. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the billionaire who had once yanked a crying child from her arms, but a man who, perhaps, was learning. Still, she said nothing. That night, Amelia slept deeply. her small breath steady. Alana lay on the floor beside the crib, the faint hum of the city beyond the walls. Somewhere down the hall, Oliver's footsteps passed and then faded. For the first time since arriving, Alana felt the weight in her chest lift, not gone, but lighter. The morning after Isabel's departure, the house felt different, quieter, yet somehow fuller. Oliver sat at the long dining table, untouched coffee in front of him, his gaze distant. Alana moved through the rooms with quiet purpose, her steps steady despite the exhaustion that clung to her. She found herself in the nursery again, where Amelia lay peacefully in her crib. The baby's fingers curled in tiny fists around the soft blanket, a gentle sigh escaping her lips. Alana smiled softly, brushing a loose curl from her forehead. Oliver appeared in the doorway, watching her. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about what you said, about standing when it's hard." Alana met his eyes, cautious but open. "It's the only way worth standing," he nodded. "I want to do better. Not just for Amelia, for this house, for the people in it." She felt a flicker of hope. It starts with listening. The days that followed were filled with small changes. Oliver began staying home more, learning to soothe Amelia's cries, fumbling but trying. He asked Alana questions about the baby, about life, about what it meant to be seen and valued. One evening, as rain whispered against the windows, Oliver handed her a folder. Inside were papers, plans for a foundation, a non-profit to support women like Alana. Women who had been told they weren't enough, who had labored in silence, whose sacrifices had gone unseen. "I want you to lead it," he said. "Your name on the door." Alana's eyes widened, breath catching. "Why me?" "Because you're the reason this house is holding together. Because you see what others don't. Because you never gave up." Tears welled in her eyes, not from weakness, but from a strength hard-won through years of struggle. She looked down at the sleeping baby, then back at Oliver. "I'll do it, but I want it to be about more than just money or titles. It has to be about dignity, about hope." He smiled softly. "That's exactly why you're the right person." Weeks later, the foundation opened its doors in a modest space not far from the estate. The sign read, "The Warm Floor Foundation," a tribute to all the women who had once slept on cold floors to keep a child safe, who had carried burdens no one saw, and who refused to be invisible any longer. Alana stood at the entrance on opening day, watching as women from the neighborhood walked in, tired, hopeful, proud. She greeted each one by name, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. Oliver was there too, standing quietly in the background, learning to listen without judgment, offering support without pride. One afternoon, as Amelia played on the floor beside her, Alana reflected on the journey from the cold nursery floor to this moment filled with light and possibility. She had been told her place was beneath notice, that her value was tied to the work she did rather than who she was. But here, surrounded by women who shared her story, she understood the truth. Dignity was not a gift to be granted, but a right to be claimed. And sometimes it was the quietest acts, the humming lullabies, the warmth shared in the dark that changed everything. As the sun set over the city skyline, Alana held Amelia close, whispering the song she'd hummed so many nights before. "Oh, I got you. I always will." And in that promise, the floor beneath her felt warmer than ever.